Coogs House. All right. I don't know if you heard about it yet, but there was kind of a very, very, very big basketball game on the weekend. So let's break it down.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater came to step by, please be sure to subscribe down below. Make sure we're getting your channels each and every day, wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Also, if you're on YouTube, thank you. We're up to over 180 subscribers. That's 180 of you, just over 180 of you guys, in just over a month, like a couple days over a month. That's big time. Remember, we get to 250 subscribers, someone gets a free Marcus Sasser t-shirt from an artist named Luis. Luis was on a couple weeks ago as a bonus episode, so you can check that out to hear all about it. But we're going to give away, I like this shirt a lot. It's a vintage Marcus Sasser t-shirt. We're talking a lot about Marcus Sasser today, but a vintage Marcus Sasser look for all the U of H fans. So we get to 250 subscribers. Got to hit subscribe to make us get there. And then we're going to give away someone who's commenting on episodes. Make sure you leave a comment. That way we know who to give it to. If you can't have anything to say after this, I mean, it'd be hard to after the game we just played against Virginia. But if you can't have anything else to say after that, tell us whether or not you like crunchy or smooth peanut butter on your PB&J. All right, so here's we're going to break this down today and looking at all things that have to do with this big win Houston just had over Virginia. Number 2 ranked Virginia Cavaliers. I'll say it 1,000 times today. The first segment, we're going to look at like the keys to victory, what led the Houston Cougars as a theme to winning that basketball game. The second segment is going to look at like individual performances. I got a couple guys I got to shout out very, very specifically. And then in the third and final segment, we get some things that still give me pause and kind of what this means going forward, both because of things that give me pause and things that don't. So without further ado, let's jump in the first part here. First of all, I have to shout this part out. I predicted Houston would win 61-55. When the foul game started and it was like less than a minute left and teams were and Virginia was trying to foul to like make Houston miss free throws or whatever. And I guess that could happen. It was 63-54. I feel like I was really, really close there. Now the game finished at 69-61. So the difference I had was actually relatively, I said a 6-point difference, ended up being an 8, a couple free throws here, a couple free throws there. Anyway, I think I had this one kind of on the money. Let's talk about what went right. So the short roll is kind of in like the Twitter, fun phrase. I think it's because Bill said it a couple different times on the broadcast. First is make sure we know what that is. On a short roll, wherever you're setting a screen from, either one of the slots or straight up down at the right above the nail at the top of the key. The short roll is instead of rolling all the way to the basket, you roll to about that 15, 17 foot area, kind of at the elbows or the nail in the middle of the free throw line. You can also see on an empty side where you short roll to like the short corner. That wasn't quite what people were talking about in this game, but the short roll is shorter than the long roll to the rim, right? We think about long roll like DeAndre Jordan lob at the rim, right? Lob City kind of stuff. Short roll is kind of getting that in-between spot where then you theoretically hit the roller where they've got room to isolate. And this is really where Jarace Walker, the 5-star freshman forward, get to kind of show off his versatility in that creative space there. Virginia, as good as they are, number 2 team in the country, did not have anyone that could really match up with him in that area. If they sent a guy to double on the short roll, he'd kick it out. If they had a guy in front of one-on-one, he had a floater at one point in the first half and stuff like that. We'll get into more about his specifics in a moment. But schematically, the thing Houston really beat them on here, whether it was Jarace Walker, J1 Roberts, Reggie Chaney, at one point it was Tremont Mark, whoever the role man was in this, the reason Houston was able to beat Virginia with this constant, simple action was that Virginia's defense, much like Houston's, is to putting a lot of pressure on the screen and roll and kind of putting a 2-on-1 there. That means that if the short roll and goes to the mid-range area, that means that he will take up a third defender, essentially, and then that means he has all these options. If the third defender is up on top of him, he is driving into a 4-on-3 kind of look where he has 3 teammates that are being covered by 2 other guys, and he's taking up 1. If he makes a move and can take up a second defender, Suddenly, he really has 3 teammates with one guy, and that one guy is always wrong because there's 2 other guys open, even if they're scrambling off with the double on the backside, right? And the third thing that happens here a lot is that defender kind of gets stuck in no man's land because they don't want to jump up on the roll and give away a layup, an open jump shot, whatever. But they also know that their assignments. They're going to try and take away that slowly and force them into a 17-footer. Houston was able to knock down all kinds of options off of this. You saw one big kick out. Reggie Chaney hit Jarace Walker for a 3 with about 4.5 minutes left. That I thought at that point felt like a dagger until later. Jarace Walker hit Tremont Mark on a similar kind of action. Same thing. He short rolls, catch the elbow, one dribble kick out. The Tremont Mark 3 was like a catch and shoot as fast as it goes too. Those kind of actions really put Virginia in a bind because Houston's so much quicker that they couldn't keep up with it as they peeled off of that initial double team on the screen using their defensive scheme against them. The other thing that was interesting is that the killer defense out of Houston Cougars, you'd have thought if anyone in America was ready for it, it would be Virginia because the way they see it at practice, schematically, they play more of a pack line. We're pressed out to like 28 feet. But you'd anticipate they'd be ready for that ugly, muddy game. And I don't know that they were necessarily. They, I guess, hit some shots on the stretch again, get up into the 60s. But it felt like for a lot of this game, they were never going to break 52, right? And they ended up obviously doing it. So I want to say that obviously Sampson, those guys, they didn't change a lot schematically what they wanted to do. I don't necessarily see anything like game busting or, oh my God, that was so creative. Like they just did their thing defensively. But the real key here, before we dive into our second segment, we look at like individual performances, is that the balance of a lot of guys get headlined in this, especially Jarace Walker with a 17 points, 7 rebound kind of day. But the balance scoring here across the board for the Houston Cougars really put a damper on Virginia's defense because Virginia's defense, much like Houston's, says, okay, if that's their guy, we're taking him away. Houston didn't have one guy to take away, which spoils that whole plan. So Jarace Walker had 17 points. J'Wan Roberts had 10 points. Tremont Mark had 13. Jamal Shed had 11. Marcus Sasser had 13. That's 5 starters in double figures. And the stat of the day, we don't have any cute music to play here, but the stat of the day for that is that in 442 career games for future Hall of Fame basketball coach Tony Bennett at University of Virginia, that's the first time in his entire career that 5 starters on the opposing team have scored in double figures. Tremendous work out of Tony Bennett historically there, but also that's why this worked, right? Tony Bennett's entire career has been saying, okay, your guy's Marcus Sasser, you got to be with somebody else. Your guy's Jarace Walker. You got to be like, they'll take that guy away. But Houston had too many options. And that's kind of like throughout the season, this point, like, when is Sasser going to get one of those 30-ball kind of games? Or when is Jarace Walker going to look like a top 10 pick on offense? Or what? And I'd argue he has a couple times, but not here or there. Those kinds of moments where it was like, where is that single guy for Houston at this point, led to Houston having all of the guys open because Virginia couldn't take any of them away, whether it was Sasser in the first half, Tremont Mark down the stretch, Jamal said just his speed on the high pick and roll, whatever those things were. At the end of the day, J'Wan Roberts had some putbacks that were also I should give credit for, and I still don't know how people let him get the left hand, but I like that they let him get to the left hand. Having so many options offensively, especially when talking about the short roll, being able to then spit it and kick it, those kinds of things are huge, especially when it comes to March and guys are writing short game plans for that second day of, second game in 3 days or whatever it is, or you just don't really know each other yet the same way that you might if you play a conference opponent or whatever. Suddenly it's like, oh man, the scouting report for Houston's really, really long. Because we didn't see Terrence Arsenault. Emmanuel Sharp came in. I told you he'd come in. He didn't make it to 3, so he came right back out. We didn't see a whole lot of Javier Francis. Like on the whole, Houston probably still had some bullets left in the chamber, right? Like at the end of the day, that's a big, big moment for Houston. Big, big win. Biggest road win in program history. If you look at true road games and ranking of opponents, it's huge for Sampson, huge for the program, and huge for Houston Cougar basketball. Speaking of things that are huge, today we're going to talk to you a little bit about LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is helping you hire the new people for your business, your small business, and helping make sure that you have the best team, kind of like Houston had the best team on Saturday. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team, like Jarace Walker, faster and for free. Once you post your hiring, you can post your job, then you put a purple hashtag hiring frame around your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. So in the second segment here, we're going to look a little bit at individual performances. But before we get into that, I do feel like I need to preface it that every game that the Houston Cougars play, you could probably pull out one or two guys. So the truth is that the thing that I've loved watching with this team in all of these games, whether it's Alabama, even in the loss against Alabama or whatever, is that they just kind of find the hot hand and they ride it. There's a real team camaraderie there. Their hashtag is for the city. They seem to be very much for each other too. But I'm looking at actual individual performances. The first thing I would talk about the bat, and I kind of hinted at this in the first segment, is Jarace Walker. Now, Jarace Walker came in 5-star, got to IMG as a sophomore. And if you're like a high school recruiting person, you might remember when his sophomore year at IMG, you're looking at other big time guys in the NBA now. And all of a sudden it's like, who's that 6'8" sophomore kid? Who like he was built as well as any of those guys as a sophomore. And so he's always been building towards this. And everyone's projecting him to be a top 10 pick in this summer's draft because of the way he's built, the athleticism he's got, and those kinds of things. To this point, his game has looked like more pro-built for a space out. No one can play 3 seconds defense in the key and those kind of things, and that'll all help him out when he gets down the road to the pros. And it's like, that just hadn't quite shown up in college yet. He even kind of got in Sampson's doghouse for fouling 3-point shooters just a few days ago at this point, right? However, his versatility, both able to set the screen, become the short roller, to be able to catch the ball on a catch and shoot 3 outside, or to exploit a mismatch on that rotation I tried to talk through about those short rolls. Being able to do all of those things helps Houston immensely. Helps Houston in a way that I don't think they win this game without a guy as versatile as Jarace Walker playing that small forward / power forward position. Now, he hits the dagger killer Kobe fadeaway at a minute 40 to make it 61-50. And it's like, okay, this one's over. Obviously things kept going, fouls and free throws and 3, the game finished 69-61. But bluntly, Virginia, with all of their threes and all of their stop clock free throws and everything, got the 61 points. And that fadeaway made it 61 for Houston. That was you're never going to get past that. If you're thinking about Elam ending kind of stuff, that separates it just too much down the stretch there. The short roll thing really works. Obviously, Chaney had a big pass or two, and Jaywan Roberts had a big pass or two. But the short roll thing really works when they get Jarace Walker to be the facilitator at that spot. The reason pro scouts are salivating over Jarace Walker is because he can do those things from that spot, right? I love watching him take it from the nail and that short roll kind of action, up fake, one dribble floater kind of stuff. I think he's got phenomenal touch for a big man from that spot. He hit a big floater in this game in the first half to kind of help get Houston rolling, and so that obviously helps. And then there was a stretch down towards the end of the first half. I forget how much time was left exactly, where he had a super long 2 after a back-breakingly tough defensive possession out of Virginia, and it was like, well, after all that great defense, they're still going to hit a long 2. Oh my God. And those kinds of moments add up over the course of a game if you're Houston trying to beat Virginia there. So Jarace Walker plays a huge role in this one in a way that I think we all expect every game, but we might not have seen necessarily in a way that made us super hopeful. We knew it was in him. He's had flashes of it, but the game start to finish here was very, very clear. He also, for what it's worth, guarded every position on the floor at some point, except I don't guess he guarded Kihei Clark. I don't remember the position, but he guarded, 2 through 5 on the floor for Virginia at some point throughout the game, played very, very aggressive defense, finished with 7 rebounds. And honestly, it felt like one or two turnovers here or there, a shot clock violation. Like he might have ended up actually with 10 boards had Virginia had a little bit more competent offense. But I think what's interesting there is that that 7 rebounds does not tell the story. 7 rebounds, a steal and a block does not tell the story of his impact on defense because of the opportunities he took away. Think when we talk about NFL corners and the best NFL corners actually don't have that many stats because you don't throw to their side of the field. That's what's happening with Jarace Walker a lot of times on defense. And I think that, and we'll talk to somebody tomorrow, but that's the kind of pro stuff you're seeing out of him. Obviously, we can't talk this game not about the other future pro, Marcus Sasser. Sasser did just finish with 13 points and finished 3 of 10 from 3. I think it's worth noting, though, that they needed all 3 of those in the first half. He was the lifeline of the first half, and so he's getting an individual performance sticker of sorts here because Houston came out slow and was down 9-0 really quickly. And frankly, that's when Marcus Sasser look, we got to get a bucket here. Took it off, got a 2-pointer, right? A couple possessions later, it's okay, we're going to get a big bucket here. He made it 14-40. He hits those plays in the first half that kind of kept Houston treading water on this hostile environment on the road. Bluntly, a long way away, a place we don't normally get to play. It's not an every year kind of thing. We've got a super young team, right? We'd have Jarace Walker's a freshman. Tremont Mark got hurt last year and missed most of the season. Javier Francis was in the game he got his 4 minutes all in the first half. He is a sophomore. They didn't play at all last year. Emmanuel Sharp got 9 minutes mostly in the first half as well. Though a true redshirt freshman that showed up last January and was hurt and didn't get to play all season. Marcus Sasser's steadiness in the first half. Yes, he got 13 points, and I think we all kind of expect more 16 out of him. And 13 to 16 doesn't sound that much when you think about a couple of them were free throws down the stretch and they're fouling. I just have to say that I feel if it were not for his aggressiveness on the bounce in the first half, Houston's looking at a much different game going into halftime. Instead, Houston went at halftime up 4 because he was treading water, keeping us afloat. And then I was okay, we got this one, right? And they came in the second half and did their thing. And I think that's really important. And frankly, the kind of thing that a veteran leader like Sasser does for you. The other guy I want to shout out is another perimeter guy. I could talk about Roberts and Roberts' toughness. But Roberts' toughness led to a lot of he had 5 makes from inside of 5 feet. What I thought Tremont Mark did in 37 minutes of play really didn't come off the floor. And when you think about his importance in the Alabama game, I think it's really important, right? So Tremont Mark got to his left every time. I don't think they knew he was left-handed, and I'm glad no one told him. There was the play with 5-ish minutes left where Shed saves it to Mark, who then is falling out of bounds and saves it to Chaney for a big dunk. That ended up being a big momentum play, whereas, again, one of those plays for Virginia is we did everything we can defensively, and Houston still got a dunk. That's a big, big deal. He had clutch free throws on the stretch. We saw Houston, when he had fouled out in the Alabama game, miss those free throws down the stretch. So that, back and forth was really interesting. And continuing to cite that Alabama game, he fouls out of that one, and things went horribly awry. He played great defense, moved his feet, did not foul, no dumb cheap ones, got to play 37 minutes, and we saw the importance of him, his length defensively, his intelligence offensively. He doesn't take bad shots and do dumb things. He had a great 3-point basket off of, we talked about in the short rolls bit earlier in the show, but he had that great clutch make 3 with about 2.5 minutes left to kind of ice things. He really, really was just better than solid. And again, we saw what happens when he was out in the game just a week ago. So it's really, really important for Houston. And he showed that importance throughout things. And frankly, if I were a betting man, I would imagine that most games Tremont Mark plays 37 minutes in, we're going to do all right. Speaking of betting, let's talk a little bit about Bet Online. They're helping us bring you a show today. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season, basketball, the World Cup. We got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. Fastest and easy way to get your sporting info. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. So we have 2 episodes later this week previewing the Independence Bowl where Houston plays Louisiana Lafayette. I feel like I have to point out that I am telling you up until that game, take Houston, They had them favored by 6.5 points. Take the points as well. Houston's going to win by a touchdown or more. That's more than 6.5 points. They also have the over-under set at 58. And unless Houston wins 50-0, I think that's going to be over. So I'm taking all of those things for an exciting bowl season, perhaps just because I want to see touchdowns. But I'm saying to take Houston, the points, and the over across the board for the Independence Bowl. And I'm telling you to do it at betonline.net. All right, in our third segment, we're going to look at like some things that gave me pause on the game because nothing goes perfectly, and then kind of where this game sets up Houston as we look forward. All right, so I mentioned the slow start kind of sort of earlier, and I have to admit that like as I get why it happened, so I don't want to act like upset, but I think if this team were like the clear-cut, no one can hang with this kind of number one team in the country, we wouldn't have it. Now, admittedly, a hostile environment like you saw in Charlottesville, crazy stadium, all that kind of stuff, that's not something that's going to happen. There will be people upset and people ready to come get Houston in the American Conference. I don't mean to say it like that. Frankly, I imagine like SMU will be a tough place to play. I imagine Memphis will be a tough place to play and stuff like that. But I will say that I would have liked to see Houston kind of come out the gates ready to play. They knew what was on the line, right? Houston had everything on the line in this game because if they'd have lost this game, it had been the classic, oh, it's American Athletic Conference team, can't win a big game in the pre-conference, and then they play in the small conference, and look what happens then, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so you knew that they knew what was on the line for them, and I just would like to see them come out the gates ready to go there. You know, they didn't. Interestingly enough, I also so the free throws as a whole for the team they made free throws on the stretch, and so good for them. I kind of would like to see them get more of them, including that stretch at the end of the foul game and all the free throws. They only got 13 free throws. Now Virginia's a very good defensive team, but with Houston's speed and athleticism, I like to see them get to the cup for more and ones. In the process of that, they shot 21 threes and just 38, air quotes, 38%, which is good for a college game. However, 8 for 21 from three makes me think that, maybe we should go more like 6 for 18 and attack, maybe, 6 for 17 or something like that, but attack the basket on more of those and get more and one free throw layup kind of situations, because I think at that point you're also hurting the Virginia defense by fouling some of those guys out. Now, Virginia, again, is a very good defensive team, so maybe I'm just being too hopeful there. When I look at like the other things from this game that worry me, it's not necessarily like thematic things, but there was a moment on the stretch where like Kihei Clark poked the ball away from Jamal Shed for an easy layup at kind of a crucial moment, right? The Jamal Shed save that got Tremar Mark, that got to Reggie Chaney, and eventually led to a dunk. Like Jamal Shed had a lot of options when he saved that. Why do you throw it to the guy nearly out of bounds? Like those kinds of things, I think, are what got to me. Very, very small one-up kinds of things, right? Nothing too crazy. A very, very good team win. I don't mean to like make mountains out of molehills. The only other thing I'll say is that the reason this game didn't play it like the Alabama game, and I don't have to say this nicely, it's just Virginia's not as athletic as Alabama, right? Out of the Alabama game, Sampson himself said a very big problem for the Cougars was that we had slow feet defensively and getting beat off the dribble when they went 4 out, 1 in, basic dribble drive kind of basketball. Virginia doesn't have the ability to do that. And so I don't have evidence, if I'm being completely honest, that Houston has fixed that problem. And I don't know when I'll ever get evidence. I think Memphis will be a good test in conference, but both of those games are in February. I don't know when we'll see it, but I think that is still in my head as a problem for this basketball team. And so I don't feel like I can write that off from this game. And since I can't write that off from this game, that's still a concern of mine coming out of it. Now, admittedly, I see you nodding your head. That was something I was never going to be able to write off from this game. And so like maybe that's just a me thing. As far as things that come out of this game and are like a good thing, I will say that they beat number 2 Virginia, which is the team in front of them in the AP poll. Right ahead of them in the AP poll, Alabama lost number 15 Gonzaga 100-90. That someone put up 100 on the Alabama team was kind of scary to me. but Gonzaga is really, really good. They dropped some early, but Gonzaga is really, really good. UConn beat a bad Butler team. Purdue barely beat Davidson, so look out for Davidson on your smaller colleges kind of thing. Anyway, suffice to say, I think Houston might move up to like number 3 again in the ranking. I don't think they'll get higher than the 2 or the 1 spot. I don't think they'll get up to the 2 or the 1 spot because they're not undefeated, and Purdue and UConn both are. Although I would solidly say, and KenPom still backs me up because this was a quad 1 win on KenPom and on net ratings. Houston has had a more difficult non-conference schedule than Purdue and UConn heading into the holiday. Now, Purdue will point out that, like, in the Big Ten, they have a very difficult conference schedule. And UConn will point out that they're going to have some difficult conference opponents as well. And so I imagine, and I don't mean to say those teams are not good. I just mean to say that, like, Houston has shown me a lot this season. Thus far, I'll say 10 minutes. Some people might be pessimistic, say 15. If you take away 10 minutes from the Alabama game, Houston's undefeated with one of the most difficult non-conference schedules in America, right? And so I think that Houston deserves to be the top team, and that's why KenPom has them as the top team, right? I bet when the AP poll comes out later this afternoon, you'll probably see Houston somewhere in more like the 3 range. They might be 4 with like, I don't think they'll jump Arizona from 9. Maybe Kansas jumps from 8. I don't know. I could see something like that in the AP poll, but I will say that I don't expect Houston to be any higher than 3. I also don't expect them to be lower than 3. That's just kind of where I see them settling in. When the AP poll drops, make sure you find me at Painsworth 512, PAINSWORTH 512 on all your social media platforms, and we can talk about it from there. I'm be happy to talk all things Houston Cougars, all things Rockets, Astros, the Texans. The Texans are just so bad. But I guess we'll talk about them as a tough game against the Chiefs, I guess, this weekend. Sneakers. We can talk sneakers, Jays. I'm not really an Adidas guy, but I got Jays and Nikes all over the wall. Talk about those as well. I got my Whataburger cup. We'll talk food if you want to as well. Make sure you do all that with me at Painsworth 512. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. As far as a second listen goes, I'm going to recommend Locked On Astros. They're doing a great job covering the offseason for the World Series champion Astros. Big signing over the weekend, so make sure you go check that out at Locked On Astros. Thank you all so much for checking out Locked On Cougs, making us your first listen. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Go Cougs!